Gana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradhayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Tvishe Namaha Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Is everyone able to see me okay? Or would you prefer I sit on a chair? This is okay? Okay. We can. Do you want to? Okay. Okay, sure. So last time we'd covered the Najayate Mriyate Vakadachin verse. Yeah. Did anyone get a chance to look at that? Yeah. Okay.
Even my son can say it now because I've been saying it so many times.
Oh, good. Shall we all recite it a few times? And then we can recite it individually. So this is 220. Najayate mriyate vakadachin Nayam bhutva bhavita vanabhuyaha Ajo nitya shashvato yam purano Na hanyate hanyamane sharire Na jayate mriyate vakadachin Nayam bhutva bhavita vanabhuyaha Ajo nitya shashvato yam purano Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. Last time. Na jayate mriyate vakadachin Nayam bhutva bhavita vanabhuyaha Ajo nitya shashvato yam purano Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. Would you like to start?
Do you want me to do it line by line?
Yeah. We'll repeat after you. Na jayate mriyate vakadachin Nayam bhutva bhavita vanabhuyaha Ajo nitya shashvato yam purano Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. Haribol. Some of those words are tricky because they sound so similar, right?
Yes. This one I struggled with more than the first two, but I'm just...
It's longer and it's hard when the words repeat themselves. Yeah. There's a verse which in the Bhagavatam which is like yat, yato, yasya, and it's just like all the different, it's all wise and it's all a way of saying that from which, etc. Like, and it's just like 8 something different words. And memorizing that verse was a nightmare. Because you have to remember, because someone who knows Sanskrit can just get it, but someone who doesn't, it's harder. Yeah. That's a good effort.
Keep trying. Thank you.
Anyone else wants to recite that verse? Na jayate mriyate va kadachin Nayam bhutva bhavita vana bhuyah. Ajo nitya shashvato yam purano. Na hanyate. Would you like to try again? That last time? Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. Haribol. Anyone else? Na jayate mriyate va kadachin. Nayam bhutva bhavita vana bhuyah. Ajo nitya shashvato yam purano. Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. Haribol. Anyone else?
Na jayate mriyate va kadachin.
Na jayate mriyate va kadachin.
Nayam bhutva bhavita vana bhuyah.
Nayam bhutva bhavita vana bhuyah.
Ajo nitya shashvato yam purano.
Ajo nitya shashvato yam purano.
Na hanyate hanyamane sharire.
Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. Haribol. Anyone else? Na jayate mriyate va kadachin. Nayam bhutva bhavita vana bhuyah. Ajo nitya shashvato yam purano. Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. Haribol. Any last takers? Na jayate mriyate va kadachin. Nayam bhutva bhavita vana bhuyah. Ajo nitya shashvato yam purano. Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. Haribol. Anyone else? Okay. What is the next verse?
244, which I've started on, but it's there's a lot of really long words in it.
We have a Sayatmika Buddha. 241.
To attach to sense enjoyment, and material occupation.
Bhogeshvarya Prasaktanam. Okay. Can I make a change? Can I request, rather than 244, we look at 241? So cross off 244 from the list, just make it 241. That's a more important verse. It's an eternal friend. You're acquiring minor verses. Don't cross it out in the Bhagavad Gita. You know, if you cross out something in the Bhagavad Gita, it actually felt in Krishna's body. There's a pastime like this. The book is Krishna personified, yeah. But just don't memorize 244, memorize 241 instead. Now, something we didn't discuss in class was that this particular verse, when Prabhupada read it, it fixed his mind on his desire to come to the West. You will see this being described in Surrender Unto Me, the study guide that you have. It's an extraordinary insight into Prabhupada's heart and mind. But Prabhupada read this verse, and he was the phrase, Vyavasayatmika Buddhir, refers to that one pointed attention that is brought up about in the heart and mind of somebody who's completely fixed on serving his spiritual master It's fixed on serving Krishna according to the instructions of his spiritual master. And when Prabhupada read this verse, and particularly Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on this verse, which is quoted in Surrender Unto Me, Prabhupada decided yes. He was thinking how to go, if I should go, not if so much if I should go, but how can I do it? Prabhupada was thinking about that. But then the moment Prabhupada read this commentary, he was like, yes, I have to go. Somehow or the other, I must go. Prabhupada spoke about that later on. Okay. Vyavasayatmika buddhir. Vyavasayatmika buddhir. Vyavasayatmika buddhir. Ekeha kurunandana. Ekeha kurunandana. Ekeha kurunandana. Vyavasayatmika buddhir. Ekeha kurunandana. So if you deconstruct the phrases here, Atmika refers to the mind. Vyavasaya Atmika Buddhir. It means that the mind is fixed, well, more precisely here, Atma doesn't mean the mind here. Atma can mean the body, it can mean the mind, it can mean the spirit soul, sometimes it can mean the super soul. But here, the mind is completely fixed, Vyavasa, in the Atma. So for devotees, this means in Krishna. For transcendentalists, it means in realization of their spirit soul. Or it can also mean the purification of their mind. But the intelligence is fixed in serving Krishna. That's what this phrase means. Vyavasaya Atmika Buddhir. Ekeha. Eka means one. Eka iha Kurunandana. It is fixed here in one spot. Kurunandana is Arjuna's name. Nandana means son of, descendant of. Kurunandana means descendant or son of the Kuru dynasty. So, Vyavasayatmika Buddhir Ekeha Kurunandana. O Kurunandana, O Arjuna, the intelligence is one-pointedly fixed at Krishna's lotus feet. So that is the meaning of the first two lines. Vyavasayatmika Buddhir Ekeha Kurunandana. Vyavasayatmika Buddhir Ekeha Kurunandana. Vyavasayatmika Buddhir Ekeha Kurunandana. Bahu Shakha means branched. Shakha means branches, as in tree. So Bahu Shakha means many branched. What is many branched? Their intelligence. It is not fixed in one direction. It is branched out everywhere. He anantascha. And how many such branches are there? Ananta. Anta in Sanskrit means end. Ananta means without an end. Their intelligence is branched out in unlimited directions, in countless directions. They don't have a single goal in their life. You know, from 6 to 8 in the morning, it might be about exercise. From 8 to 10, it might be about spending time with family. 10 to 6, it might be about work, etc. But their intelligence is not fixed on one goal around which their activities revolve. It is just played out in different things. Bahushaka hi anantascha buddhayo. So it's referring to the intelligence of Vyavasayinam, of those whose intelligence is not fixed on Krishna or on the Atma. It is just not fixed. It is not fixed, and it is spread out in many, many, many branches. So Bahushaka hi anantascha. Bahushaka hi anantascha. Bahushaka hi anantascha. Buddhayo Vyavasayinam. Buddhayo Vyavasayinam. Buddhayo Vyavasayinam. Vyavasayatmika buddhi rekeha kurunandana. Bahushakahi anantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. Now let's recite the whole verse together thrice. Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kurunandana bahushakahi anantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kurunandana bahushakahi anantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kurunandana bahushakahi anantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. Would anyone like to try to recite it? Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kurunandana bahushakahi anantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. Haribol. Anyone else? Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kurunandana bahushakahi anantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. Haribol. Anyone else?
The very last word mean?
Vyavasayinam. It means those whose fixedness is not going in one direction. For example, they don't have a particular goal in their life. Prabhupada translates it as one who's irresolute. So someone who doesn't have a fixed goal in their life to attain Krishna's lotus feet. Someone who's irresolute, who's just following their mind. Sometimes another phrase that is used to describe this word is manaratha, one who's traveling on the chariot of their mind. Because the mind is such that it can, just like a child sometimes, you go to the supermarket and I want this toy, and if you don't get it for me, I'm going to scream so bad that you are going to look like the worst parent in the entire world. And then 5 minutes later, they just forget it. So that's what that word means.
Very transient nature. Then.
Transient nature. And this even applies to people who apparently are, very, very, apparently who are very, very focused. Why is that?
Because Krishna isn't the goal.
So what does that mean in their life?
They're chasing after temporary goals.
True, but then why does that mean that they're irresolute? Because their goals change over time. Because you even look at the most fixed person, at some point that passion burns out. And you will see it change. At some point. And if not, even during the day, it's not like all their activities are oriented towards that goal. There are other parts of their life they do to fill other parts of their heart. But for a devotee, everything is filled with Krishna. So therefore they're completely focused. And everything they do, whether it's pleasurable or a duty or what have you, it centers around Krishna's service. Anyone else wants to recite this verse? Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kurunandana bahushakahi anantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. Haribol. Okay, so the other verse I would like to add to this list is 240. We will look at that next week. It's another really, really important verse, and then something you will encounter not only in preaching, but also in your own personal life. 240 and 241.
And we're not memorising 244 at this point.
No, we're not.
My shloka book's a mess now.
Sorry?
I said my shloka book's a mess now.
I'm sorry.
Okay, just that I'm just...
But it's okay. You can always add extra verses.
Yeah, I know, but...
As kids, when we were in like the Sunday school classes, we would be asked, okay, just you recite a verse. We would take pleasure in reciting a verse that nobody had ever heard of before. And then we'd get glorified. Oh, you're so dedicated. Okay. So, last week, we actually concluded the description of Nishkama Karma Yoga. What was Nishkama Karma Yoga again? So explain the Karma Yoga part. Yes, and Karma Yoga? What does the word yoga mean? Right, so Karma Yoga means? Close to. Karma Yoga is very, very close. Karma Yoga is worship of the Lord through activities related to this body and mind. So basically this world. Worship of the Lord through activities of connected to this body. It doesn't include, for example, sweeping the temple. It's an activity by the body, but it is not an activity of the body, if you know what I mean. It's not an activity conducted for the purpose of the body. For the body, for example, bathing, or for example, our occupation, or taking care of family. And off the body? Off the body, oh sorry, you mean to say for the body, or?
The one that is connected to karma.
Okay, so that would be all the activities that we do during the day. So for example, our waking up, our sleep, our cooking, our eating.
And not sweeping the temple.
Not sweeping the temple, that's direct devotional service. Anything which is which is based on one's desire to please Krishna, and one is directly serving either the deity, one is serving the holy names, and anything directly connected to Krishna. It may use the body, of course it has to use the body and mind, but it is not considered karma, it's considered bhakti. And so last time we also set up a framework which we discussed the three aspects of bhakti. Does anybody remember that framework? Yes.
Sangha Sila and Sivita Sila.
Yes. So what is Aropa Sila mean?
Covered with bhakti.
Okay. So Aropa Sila means covered bhakti?
Material activities covered with bhakti.
Okay. Aropa Sila. Sorry. Yeah, people can't see me, right? So Aropa in Sanskrit means coating. So it is material activity coated with bhakti, which effectively becomes bhakti. Then the second category we discussed was what?
Sangha Sila.
Sangha Sila. So what is this?
Using my skills.
Right. So can you give me an example?
So we have management skills or something.
Management skills
Themselves, the management skills
is not bhakti.
Do it for a program or a service.
Organizing Janmashtami or something.
Yeah.
It, by association, by Sangha, it gets transformed into bhakti. Another example is regulation. Is regulation in and of itself bhakti? Discipline, sleeping on time. My grandmother used to tell me, you don't have discipline, what is the use of all your bhakti? She used to say, in India they say that, I think. But is discipline in and of itself bhakti? Not really. But connected to Krishna, in other words, if it's used so that we can sleep early, wake up early, chant our rounds in the morning, or possibly have Mangalarti at home, or come to the temple for Mangalarti, that gets transformed or takes on the quality of bhakti. And the last one was Swarupa Siddha. What does this mean?
Already perfect.
So it is already perfect in and of itself. Swarupa, by its very nature, it is already Siddha, perfect. So this refers to the 9 processes of bhakti, or in the nectar of devotion, the 64 angas of bhakti. There's nothing that needs to be added or put around these items of bhakti to make it bhakti. It is bhakti in and of itself. Now, something we didn't look at last week was the motivations with which this could be performed. If someone is performing, for example, the 9 processes of bhakti, can this be performed with a desire for material gain? Can people hear and chant because they want something in their life?
It wouldn't be pure chanting, would it?
It wouldn't be, but that's chanting. There's nothing here about the motivations. This is about the activity.
Right, not the intention.
Not the intention yet. Can someone perform Swarup Siddha Bhakti, like hearing, chanting, remembering, worshipping the deity form of the Lord, for material desire, for material gain?
But if a person is thinking about material gain, would it still be pure? Because in the end, we want something different to what pure bhakti is, which is just Krishna's love.
It's not pure bhakti, but Swarup Siddha Bhakti refers to the activities. Like sometimes have you seen in Lord Bazaar, when people are saying, Haribol Prabhu, Haribol. Have you heard that before? And they're calling you to their shop. See Prabhupada, they have a picture of Prabhupada in their shop. Prabhupada, we follow Prabhupada. He's a great, great Mahatma. Why do you think they're saying this?
So they can relate to you, so you'll buy something.
You can buy something.
Yeah.
So what kind of chanting is that? Is it Swarup Siddha Bhakti?
I don't know.
Well, it is. Because it's chanting Krishna's names. It doesn't, chanting Krishna's names even negligently or in fun still is wonderful. But the motivation is material desire.
I remember someone asked Srila Prabhupada about this, and I just remember Yashoda telling me, I don't remember a quote from Shikshamrita or anything like that. And then Srila Prabhupada's response was, do better to ask than Krishna. So,
Yes. So it's glorious, actually, if someone does that.
Yeah.
Prabhupada sometimes even say, saying Hare Krishna is bad is good.
Because at least they're saying it.
If you're chanting Krishna's
Yeah,
name.
yeah.
And okay, so but can you chant with a desire for liberation? Well, yeah, you can chant with a desire. You can also chant for liberation.
So in the last class you mentioned that here bhakti, that is the first Siddha Bhakti, you cited two with the nectar of devotion.
Yes.
Anya Abhilasita Sunya.
Yes.
Jnana Karma Anadvita.
Yes.
So based on that thing, no jnana, no change of knowledge or the material desire.
Yeah. See, there was one part of it which I didn't add last week that I'm adding now.
Yeah.
So it's just a refinement of what was said last week. As we continue to describe, that point will be clarified.
Yeah.
So that you can chant with the desire for liberation. Can you chant with the desire just to please Krishna for bhakti? Yeah. For bhakti. So, chanting for material desire, that can be the modes of passion and ignorance, right? So this is devotional service performed in the modes of passion and, ignorance. Piyana. Devotional service performed for the motivation of liberation, for purification of heart, for ultimate freedom from this world, is in the mode of goodness. But for bhakti, is above the modes. Same with Sangha Siddha Bhakti. Can you perform Sangha Siddha Bhakti for material desire? Yeah, sure. You can organize Janmashtami because you want something else from it. You can have it for material desire. Can you do it for liberation? Are people regulated and perform sadhana in a regulated way for the purpose of liberation? It's one of the conditions that they have to follow. Waking up early in the morning, taking a bath, performing certain rituals, lighting certain fires, studying the scriptures. So for liberation. And can you perform it for bhakti? Yes, you can. What about arabsita bhakti? Can you perform this for material desire? Can you work outside, offer the Lakshmi to Krishna because you want something in return? You can perform it with the desire for material desire. Can you perform it with the desire for liberation? Isn't that Nishkam Karma Yoga? Karma Yoga offered to Krishna for the sake of liberation, of purification of life. And 3, you can of course perform it for bhakti, for increased taste in hearing and chanting. So arabsita bhakti performed for material desire. You can equate that to, for example, karma kanda type activities. Performing certain, your prescribed duties of performing the regulations of the scriptures, some rules, some rituals, etc., for personal gain. When it is performed for liberation, this is called Nishkama Karma Yoga. And so Nishkama Karma Yoga, they have elements of Arabsita Bhakti, Sanghasiddha Bhakti, because they need to apply the discipline, the regulation, the mode of goodness, etc. in their practice. And they would hear and chant about Krishna. So their entire scope of activities is here, in this realm. And as we discussed last week, their principal emphasis and faith is here, not so much here. So this is 1-star emphasis. The emphasis is here. This is the Nishkama Karma Yoga.
So for them, the ultimate goal is liberation,
It's liberation.
not creating a relationship with Krishna.
No.
Right.
They perform they connect it to Krishna because Krishna is in charge of Maya.
Right.
And he's the only one who can remove Maya. They know that.
So it's almost for them a means to an end,
Yes,
pleasing
exactly.
him to gain this liberation.
Exactly.
Right, okay.
Exactly.
I understand that now.
Now, when it comes to pure bhakti, first the devotees operate on this realm. Here. And their faith and emphasis is completely here. There's no faith and emphasis here and here. They don't believe, they don't feel like performing material duty will necessarily satisfy their heart or fill some part of their life that hearing and chanting of Krishna cannot fill. For them, hearing and chanting about Krishna is everything. And they only see value in performing material activity to the extent it helps consistently facilitate this, hearing and chanting about Krishna. So in a devotee's life, this is their core all the time. And everything they do is in reference to, does it improve my hearing and chanting? And that's what it means to say, Arabsita Bhakti with the motivation of Bhakti, Sanghasiddha Bhakti with the motivation of Bhakti. So sometimes when devotees ask, how do I become more tolerant, more disciplined? These are apparently qualities, right? Tolerance and discipline and humility are items, are qualities. But their full measure is understood when one is trying to actually cultivate the hearing and chanting of Krishna's names. If one emphasizes the chanting of Krishna's names, other needs will come about. Okay, I need to do this, this, and this to facilitate proper chanting. If proper chanting means I need to sleep on time, I will. If proper chanting means that my nature might be to criticize, but if pure chanting requires me to remove this obstacle, then I will try my best. I won't offend devotees. That value naturally comes into the heart. So everything for pure devotees is focused on this. Now, for a devotee, they can sometimes have elements of material desire in their practice. So that's when they're called mixed devotees. You can take any combination of this, and you can become a mixed devotee. We're just describing, the standards for a pure devotee, for the Nishkama Karma Yogi, or someone with material desire. But of course, devotees can work for bhakti and for material desire. There can be elements of whether if they're suffering greatly from something or the other, they can desire freedom from suffering also. But that would make them mixed devotees. Usually karma and bhakti combined in their hearts. But a pure devotee is one who is just a bhakta. And this is just a supporting element. Are there any questions about this framework?
So the Arupsudha Bhakti is for material desire. So that person will remain in the material world.
Yes.
What's the destination for him? Calm Karma Yogi, once they get the liberation, where do they go?
Brahma Yoga.
Wrong yogi. But then they always fall down again.
No, they don't. Okay, this is a topic that has to be described in some detail. There are different levels of impersonalists. One are those who perform different types of austerities without bhakti. This is described in Brahma's prayers. He says, Stula Pashavagatinam. He says, one who gives up bhakti completely and who simply engages in austerities for the purpose of understanding that they're the soul and not the body. For them, their endeavors are like when you take empty husks of rice and you beat it, you get nothing out. All you get is stronger muscles, for example. Just the value of their own austerity. That's it. They don't advance anywhere in purifying the heart or towards liberation. The second is the typical Mayavadi. Now these fellows are described in the 10th canto Bhagavatam, 2nd chapter, in the verse Yeni Ravindaksha Vimukta Maninas. So that verse describes that they advance to a particular level, but then they fall down again. The reason they fall down is these people actually perform bhakti, but they think that bhakti and Krishna are temporary. So because of that offense in their mentality, even though they perform bhakti, their bhakti doesn't give them full fruit. Rather, their heart is purified to some extent, and they feel like they're liberated. At that point, because they think, I'm liberated, I can give up all temporary things, they give up bhakti. And at that point, they fall down. So Prabhupada actually spoke about this level most often, and he clubbed every category of impersonalists into this category, because this is what we generally see around us. Prabhupada gave the example of, for example, Shivananda, who used to worship Radha Krishna deities. Traditional impersonalists, real Mayavadis, they worship Krishna, actually. If you look at Shankaracharya's commentary, he emphasizes worship of Krishna for the purpose of liberation. But then they also speak about giving up worship of Krishna at some stage, and that is their fault. The third level are people who are impersonalists. So these are the real impersonalists. What happens with them is they perform karma. Now what is the purpose of performing karma? To purify their heart. The reason they're performing karma is because they're attached, right? So until their heart becomes a little bit more detached, that is, they have that, this is Nishkam Karma Yogis initially, so their heart becomes connected to Krishna in some way. They perform karma yoga. But at some point they realize that I have now sufficient, I have a sufficient relationship with Krishna that I don't need to be attracted to karma anymore. They go above karma, they give up karma, and they go to the practice of jnana or yoga. Now, we haven't talked about this yet. You will see this in the 5th and 6th chapters. Now, the purpose of jnana and yoga, and you would have heard this, you know what the term Tattvamasi means? I am that Brahman. I am that Supreme. But the purpose of this is not to say I am equivalent to the Supreme. The purpose is to identify with spirit, pure spirit. So when you say, for example, you are, oh Krishna, you are the Supreme Brahman, and I am you, I am like you, I am of you, I have your qualities. It's like, when you want to become a sports star, you identify with them and you develop their qualities. So by identifying with Krishna's spiritual nature, they bring out their own spiritual qualities. So this becomes their practice, and this is Jnana Yoga. In Ashtanga Yoga, at this level, you meditate on Paramatma within the heart, and by direct meditation on the form of the Lord, you bring out your spiritual nature, because Paramatma is purely spiritual. But Paramatma meditation is stronger because it's more attraction to the form of the Lord. Whereas in the Jnana platform, it is less meditation on the form of the Lord and more abstract meditation on, for example, the universal form or other forms of meditation, which we will discuss. So one side is detaching. Karma means detaching oneself from karma. Jnana and yoga means attaching oneself to Krishna a little bit more, from attaching Krishna to Krishna's spiritual nature. And when that is established, they don't need jnana and yoga anymore. And remember, throughout their practice, they have all these elements. So aropasiddha means karma and jnana connected to Krishna. Any material activity, jnana is a material activity. So when they have established that sense of identity to Krishna, they give up karma and jnana. They give up any kind of basic rules or regulations. They don't have to perform them anymore. And you know what they do? They just hear and chant about Krishna, because that is purely spiritual activity. And at that level, they just hear and chant about Krishna. They take pleasure in hearing and chanting about Krishna. And Krishna takes them when their karma is finished. And they emerge into Krishna. They don't fall down. These category of people fall down. These category of people never get up to fall down. And these category of people, they gradually attain Krishna's. Because another description of Brahman is in the Bhagavad Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami says, Brahman is Krishna's form without qualities. It is still Krishna's form. So therefore it is attractive. But for devotees it's a different caliber altogether. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that this category of people should not be criticized. Because they don't know any better. They're genuine saints. And they're aspiring for Krishna. But according to their realization, according to the realization of their guru. But these people are to be condemned. Because they have a mistaken understanding of bhakti. The Mayavadi is better, they understand bhakti is temporary. But these fellows, they think bhakti is completely false. And they don't practice bhakti at all. Does that answer the question? So the Bhagavad Gita actually only describes this kind of impersonals. It doesn't even waste its time talking about them. It of course derides them. In the 9th chapter you will see those who deride my personal form. Moga asha, moga karma, moga jnana vichedasa. So moga karma, any endeavor they have in this world is finished. Moga asha, any desire for bhakti they may have is finished. And moga jnana, any desire they may have for liberation or realization of Atma, that is finished, if they do not recognize my form. So there's another question here.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask, when you talked about the austerities without bhakti, are you talking about those yogis that put their bodies through very harsh processes, like holding their arm up for a long time,
or submerging themselves in freezing cold water?
Right.
Because what they're
actually using what Krishna's giving you, I guess, in a way, aren't you, by doing that?
But their emphasis is, and actually Krishna speaks about this in the 16th chapter. He says people who torture their bodies are in the mode of ignorance when they do so.
Yeah.
But their intention is, when I submerge myself in water, I have to, with my intelligence, be very focused on the understanding that I'm a spirit soul. Otherwise I can't tolerate this.
Yeah.
But they know that the spirit soul is indifferent to every material circumstance. In summer, they surround themselves with 4 fires on either side, plus the 5th fire is the sun, and the ground obviously is hot. And they just sit there and they perform, whatever meditation they want to do. But it means that their mind has to be fixed in what they're doing. You will get Buddhist martial artists. Martial art actually started out as a spiritual practice.
Yeah, I know a few people that practice it.
Well, it started in the Shaolin monastery in that way.
Yeah.
The reason they practice martial arts, and even now you will see the Buddhist monks in the Shaolin monastery, I don't know about now, it's quite commercial now, but they would practice martial arts on the tip of the mountain. Why? Because then through that practice, you would have to become very focused in your mind. That's a vipassana meditation, by the way, where you become focused on the space between thoughts, is their understanding. But through all of this, they're trying to fix their mind away from the bodily concept of life. And they think that is enough.
Right.
But it's not.
So, is there some merit to it?
No.
No.
None whatsoever.
No, okay.
Because here's the understanding. Who's in charge of Maya? Krishna.
Yeah.
Who's going to remove Maya? Krishna. And to please Krishna is the only way to remove Maya then.
Right.
Which means that you have to have some element of bhakti in your practice.
Right.
You don't have even a tinge of bhakti, even mentally you think, may this be for Krishna's pleasure, that is enough.
So is it almost a bit empty, this extreme meditation of like, I'm trying to focus my mind in these really austere conditions? I've seen them even with water, like sitting under water while it helps them, freezing cold, trying to remain focused.
Completely useless.
But there's no supreme at the centre, so it's kind of empty.
It's completely useless.
Right, okay.
And what happens is after all that practice, the heart becomes really hard. Because they become desensitized
Right.
to suffering. It becomes really, really hard. Whereas the actual characteristic of a liberated soul is the heart is soft. It is soft, it is attracted to Krishna's pastimes, it feels for other people's sufferings. Prabhupada describes this in the beginning of Krishna book actually. He says Krishna's pastimes are attracted to three kinds of people. He's actually quoting Jiva Goswami's commentary on the 4th verse of Srimad Bhagavatam of the 10th canto. He says that Krishna's pastimes are really attracted to the liberated soul, to people who are aiming for liberation or even materialists, Prabhupada says. In fact, the very nature of liberated souls is that when Krishna's pastimes enter the ear, it enters their heart and it bubbles up a song from within their mouth. So that's the nature of the liberated soul. The heart is soft.
I never thought of that. I can see how all that years of doing that to yourself would affect your mentality actually.
Yeah.
I haven't thought of that.
There are many, and you will find that this actually is very, very prominent nowadays. And this is the thing, we often read the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, and when we study it from a framework perspective, sometimes devotees ask, why are we studying this if it's not directly our practice? There are 2 reasons for this, several reasons for this. The first one is to understand the importance of pure bhakti for ourselves. We understand by contrast what pure bhakti is and how it's different from other practices which are connected to Krishna, is the first thing. The second thing is we understand how to deal with the material world in such a way to facilitate our pure bhakti. This is on the internal level. But then also from a social perspective, there are so many people out there who have different means of trying to find value in their life. The study of the first 6 chapters provides us with a framework to understand what they're doing, what their intentions are, what their motivations are, and where they're going as a result of their practice, so that we will not be confused, 1. And 2, if we can gently encourage them to incorporate bhakti in whatever they're doing. If they won't come here, then let them incorporate bhakti in whatever they're doing, even a little bit, because then that will mean they get something from whatever they're doing. Otherwise they get nothing, absolutely nothing. And it's somewhat heartbreaking. Someone has spent 40 years of their life in strict austerity, and they get nothing from it. It's really hard. And you will find that Sridhar Swami, the original commentator on Srimad Bhagavatam, and Gyaneshwar, who was a saint in Maharashtra, they both wrote commentaries, Sridhar Swami on Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, Gyaneshwar on Bhagavad Gita. And in both the commentaries, if you study them, they themselves used to practice bhakti as devotees do. But for the general public, specifically for the yogis and gyanis, who would have this or this in their practice, they would say, without bhakti, your practice is not going to work. If you want liberation, fine, add bhakti. And that's the focus of their commentaries. Any other questions? Turuchi, was your question answered in this? Yes.
If we have time further to that. So the Nishkam Karma yogis have the full knowledge. They are doing at the last stage when they go to Sarupa Bhakti stage.
Yes.
When they are doing those activities, they are almost in full knowledge. What stops them going to the next level of
association? Because how do we know how to feel for Krishna? We don't, right? What does it mean to feel for Krishna like the gopis do, or the gopas do, or Mother Yashoda does, or the cows do, or the grass from Vrindavan does? We have no idea. And how do we, who have spent such a long time in this material world, ever come to have those feelings? The only feeling we can actually have is either I'm attached to this world, or I want to be detached from this world. So therefore, it is actually said the practice of sadhana for impersonal liberation is in the mode of goodness. Because this is the only thing you can go to. You have no idea of how all of these emotions that I want to express in this world are a perverted reflection of my original nature and connection to Krishna. And I can never know that if I don't get instruction and inspiration. So this is the real reason actually Krishna manifests his pastimes in this world. Because and he speaks what he speaks. So you know that verse, Paritranaya sadhanam vinashaya dushkritam. So Paritranaya sadhanam, which that phrase means for those devotees who are already liberated, but who are dying for want of my association. To deliver them from their burning separation from me, I come. Paritranaya sadhanam. Vinashaya dushkritam. For those demons who can never be killed, even by the demigods, Kamsa, Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, to kill them, I come. And Dharma samsthapanarthaya, to establish Dharma, but not Dharma as in Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, to establish the Dharma of pure Bhakti. In two places in the Bhagavatam, 6th canto and 11th canto, the Bhaktis, pure Bhakti is described as Bhagavad Dharma, or that Dharma which is spoken by Krishna only, which means that it's only Krishna who's capable of instructing us in pure Bhakti. No one else can actually do it. Krishna and his pure devotees. So therefore, to give us pure Bhakti, Krishna comes and is spoken by the Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And many times both Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam will speak about these other traditions, because that's the prevalent idea that most people have. And then to give them Bhakti is the purpose of these scriptures. And you know, the 6th canto where Yamaraj says there are 12 Mahajans, and apart from us, no one else knows this Bhagavad Dharma. Prabhupada would quote the words, Dharma tu sakshat bhagavat pranita. The Prabhupada would often quote that phrase to say that Dharma is under the purview of Krishna. You cannot make it up on your own. And that's true. The context in which this verse is quoted initially is to say, because the Yamadutta has come to Yamaraj and said, what is this Dharma? Ajahn just chanted one of your names, one of Krishna's names, and he was just liberated. What is this Dharma? The Dharma that we know is the checks and balances system. You perform good, pious activity, you get good results in this world. You perform sinful activity, you suffer. And then Yamaraj says, this is a different kind of Dharma. It's Bhagavad Dharma, only 12 people know it. And he quotes a list of 12 Mahajans, Prahlad, Bhishma, Janaka, himself, etc. So you think about Bali Maharaj, for example. He rejected conventional Dharma because he focused on Krishna. He was willing to go to hell for Krishna's pleasure. So this is a different category of Dharma. And very, very few people, even in Vedic literature, understood it. So the first 6 chapters, in fact, to be honest, the knowledge of the first 6 chapters, which emphasizes people's need to worship Krishna for liberation, even that was not understood. Which is why so many people have written commentaries, they incorporate Bhakti. So therefore the 2nd chapter is called Confidential Knowledge, because it describes the actual path for the impersonalists to liberation, which people were thirsting for. They would read so many Upanishads and they would come to a different conclusion. And the 7th chapter is called More Confidential Knowledge, because it describes the path to surrender to Krishna. And the 9th chapter is called Most Confidential, because it describes the path to pure bhakti after surrender has taken place. But, does that answer the question? Any other questions?
once they are going to karma yoga and they have this purification of heart, they go to the next level of jnana yoga, ashtanga yoga, and there they have this motivation of identifying with the spiritual nature.
Yes.
What after we identify the spiritual nature?
Then they give up karma and yoga, and they just share and chant about Krishna, because that's the nature of spiritual. It is bhakti yoga, but with the intention of liberation.
Yes, the intentions are different, so, but still it is bhakti yoga, right?
It is bhakti yoga, but it is not pure bhakti yoga. See, pure bhakti is the only thing capable of giving us prema bhakti. See, devotees want prema bhakti. You know what prema bhakti means? You know what the 5 kinds of liberation are? What are the 5 kinds of liberation? Sayujya is impersonal. Shashti means what? Same opulence, I think. Then Shashti, Samritya means close relationship to the Lord. Then Sarupya, same form as the Lord. Salokya means same planet as the Lord. These are the 5 types of liberation. Now above this is to have a relationship with Krishna in the 4 rasas. Since 5, mainly 4. Madhurya, Vatsalya, Sakya, and Dasya. So these 4 relationships with Krishna are purely awarded to pure devotees who practice at this last level. Mixed devotees who have an emphasis on bhakti but have other priorities in their life, they get the 4 kinds of liberation, excluding the impersonal liberation. Same planet as the Lord. It's not as close or as intense a relationship as the devotees who prema bhakti. And they go there. And then devotees who are impersonalists, who want to merge into the Lord, they get impersonal Brahman, the 5th kind of liberation. And those who do not have a proper understanding of bhakti never leave this material world. And they go up according to their practice of bhakti, but they fall down. Or they just stay in this world without going anywhere. That's a lot of information right now. This is going to be gradually discussed 5th, 6th, 7th chapters. We'll discuss it again. Is this clear? Any other questions? This is a framework by which you can understand the whole Bhagavad Gita actually. Because the entirety of Bhagavad Gita speaks about bhakti. Different categories of bhakti, different types of bhakti. But ultimately the emphasis is on pure bhakti. Alright. Now before we get into the discussion of the last section of the 2nd chapter, now here's the question. From the verse 53 onwards, 53, 54, Arjuna is going to ask the question, Sthita pragyasya ka bhasha, how is the sthita pragya? Pragya means one who is realized. Sthita pragya means one of steady realization. That's what the sthita pragya means. So this means one whose knowledge is fixed in the Atma, who is steadily realized in the Atma. And what is example? It's like a lamp in a windless place. It's completely steady, undisturbed by the currents of this material world. Later on in the section, the example is given of an ocean with many rivers entering into it. The ocean is not disturbed in any way. It remains steady. So the question is, what are the qualities? What actually happens in the stage of liberation? Because it's an interesting question. What does Brahman realization actually mean? This is what it means. Now when I look, for example, what do you think when you see a beautiful flower? Fragrant, beautiful. Everyone has unique impressions of those flowers, right? Now what kind of impressions can you have? This is beautiful, this is very tender, or this is sickly sweet, perhaps? Those impressions come from our time in this material world. If I look at a person of the opposite sex, I have particular impressions. If I look at money, I have particular impressions. And Prabhupada says, dealing with the opposite sex and dealing with money are the two impressions that have sustained for many, 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 many lifetimes. And therefore, conditioned souls react most in the presence of these two objects. But if the process of karma and jnana and yoga are to destroy material impressions, it destroys the conditioning that I have built up over lifetimes towards any object in this world. Have you ever had the experience? You look at something that you've never done before, never seen before. You've never heard much about it either. What is your feeling towards that object? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it neutral? I didn't hear that. Neutral. Can you describe such objects that you've been with or you've seen?
I think once you give the example of surfing for a person who doesn't care much about surfing, really neutral about it.
That's a difficult example to use in Australia, actually.
Yeah.
But yes, true. I mean, for me,
I'm just quoting you.
Yeah, you are. Because that was my reaction when I heard about surfing. I was like, huh, okay, fine. People do it, fine. Then I started to watch it a bit more. I was like, huh, that looks nice. But problem being in Australia. Same with me in football. I don't get it. So AFL, that is. I look at it, it's like, okay, fine. It looks a bit rough, but okay, fine. I can't relate to it. But tennis, I played tennis for something like 12, 15 years growing up. So when I look at tennis now, it just like, my mind goes in that direction. Liberation means you look at any object, situation, or thing in this world, you neither have positive nor negative impressions on that object. It's neutral. Rather, you perceive the underlying spiritual nature of all of these objects. You perceive that underlying all these objects, there is a constant spiritual energy. Beyond the atoms, beyond the prana, beyond all of these things, beyond the mind, there is some pure spiritual energy, which is part of the pure spirit soul. So therefore, it's not like, sometimes we think, the Brahman, realized fellow, how can he walk about in this world? He sees Brahman here, Brahman there, here a Brahman, there a Brahman, everywhere a Brahman. No, it's not like that. Rather, he sees the object, the tree, but he doesn't see it as we see it. He perceives, okay, this is a manifestation of Brahman. And it's temporary manifestation of Brahman, it's going to go away. But he perceives that this is a manifestation of Brahman. He sees a Brahman, the chair is a manifestation of Brahman, bodies is a manifestation of Brahman. And he has no negative or positive material impressions towards any of these objects. This is the impersonalist version of liberation. Is this okay? Is this clear?
So their idea of liberation is seeing everything in a neutral way. So having neither sort of hatred or love, kind of being always kind of equipoised in the middle.
Well, they don't. It's not just they're being equipoised. They don't have any feelings towards that thing.
Okay.
It's just
really hard to have no feelings towards.
But all our feelings are a result of our experiences in this world.
Sometimes.
Yeah, and they're built up over lifetimes. See, when you first touch a new object for the first time, you don't have any feelings towards it either. But when you start to deal with it, it develops over time, right?
Yeah.
And that's just material conditioning. So when the heart is purified completely, it just goes back to that state. You have no impressions. You don't care. Or it's not like you don't care. It's just like you don't. It's okay. It's just it. There's nothing positive or negative that you feel towards it. It's just a state, so to speak. This is the ideal of liberation. It's impossible to achieve without bhakti. Because in soul's nature, it has to be attached to something. And only when you're attached to Krishna can you actually achieve this state. The verse that describes this is in the 18th chapter, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma, Na Sochati Na Kankshati, Sama Sarveshu Bhuteshu, Mad Bhaktim Labate Param. So what this verse means is, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma, they're just naturally happy in and of themselves, they're satisfied. And na shochati, na kankshati. Shochati means they don't desire anything. Kankshati, they don't lament if anything goes away. For them, it's neutral. It's there or not there. It's got nothing to do with them. Actually, that's the feeling. This has got nothing to do with me. And if it's got nothing to do with me, neither positive nor negative, you don't have any feelings towards it. How do you feel about an unknown island somewhere in some part of the world? It doesn't mean anything to you. Yeah, it's nothing to do with you. And for them, and on spiritual realization, when they understand that they're spirit soul, for everything, it's like, it's got nothing to do with me. What am I going to do with it? You put gold in the hand, for them it's the same as a stone. Another description of the Bhagavatam is like, for someone who has been drunk, they don't actually know whether they've got their clothes on or not. It's kind of, they are aware of it in some part of their mind, but they're not conscious of it. Someone who's liberated, for them the material world is that kind of a dream. It's scarcely reality for them. But that's what happens at the stage of liberation. That is a state of the sthita prajna, in essence. Here is the description of the Bhagavatam to describe this. It says, if you have a lamp, and I'm going to draw a traditional Indian lamp, and you have a flame, this is not the kind of flame. Obviously I have different impressions of the flame. But if you have your wick like this, and you have oil here, the oil is your material impressions. The wick is your mind, and the flame are your desires / activities in this world. So the practice of karma, jnana, yoga, aided by bhakti, it destroys or it dries up this oil, and this entire wick burns up. So basically, you're destroying your subtle body. The destruction of the subtle body is called liberation. You can have a gross body as long as there's still some karma remaining, but your subtle body is completely destroyed. And at that stage, it's just a lamp, so to speak, but your mind, everything else is gone. And as a spirit soul, with your own spiritual mind and intelligence, you just see everything as being spiritual in nature. You're looking confused?
Yeah, I just have a question.
This is not for devotees.
Yes, but for devotees, just going back to what you said previously, these attachments, are they just with objects that we're indifferent to, or is that included people also?
People also. This doesn't apply to devotees.
So even your own children.
Yeah. But they have a general affection for everybody.
Yeah.
They see everyone as being spiritual. There's a general affection. And you'll see this, sarvatra anibhishnehas. You will see this in the description of the sthita prajna. But they have a general affection because everyone's a spirit soul. It's not a hardened heart. They have a soft heart. They have more compassion for people than we do. They feel for people's suffering. For them, other people's suffering hurts them. Other people's happiness, they feel okay, good. And they see that, okay, here's a manifestation of Brahman, but they are under Krishna's illusory energy. This is the real impersonalist. They see a difference between material energy themselves and Krishna. They understand that the material energy is real. They understand that the spirit soul is real and different from Krishna. That's the real impersonalist. This is a very new concept, right? in that sense. But for them, it's just the specific attachment that comes from impressions in the body, in the mind. You know, so-and-so is my wife. And, you know, I have this history with her. We often speak in these terms. We've been together for years. I have this history. We've done so many things together. I'm attached to her. All of these things are based on material impressions. And when it's destroyed, you remove that specific attachment of that relationship. But it's a general affection. Now, for devotees, and I'm adding this is not described in the second chapter, It is described in Kapilada's teachings in the Bhagavatam. I'm going to try and draw a stomach, but I'm not going to be very good at it. Obviously, hips and hands, but this is a man, this is a stomach, this is the esophagus, etc. Now, for devotees, the analogy given to describe the destruction of the subtle body is described as the fire of digestion, or the process of purification, rather. The fire of fire of digestion. Yeah. The Jata Agni, the fire of digestion. Fire of digestion is considered to be the path of purification. Why? How does this work? Well, when devotees eat something, or when anybody eats something rather, the fire of digestion has two effects. One, anything which is not required for the body, it just throws it out. But that which is relevant and important for the body digests it and assimilates it into itself. Similarly, when devotees hear, like kirtan, for example. Now, our hearing of kirtan is not just the pure appreciation of the holy names. There is an element of musical attraction, which is why, for example, we get kirtan in a rock format, or sometimes, sweet, melodious kirtans, or some people, prefer, jumping, dancing kirtans. That part about appreciating the holy names in a format, that format comes from our material impressions. But that's okay. In whatever format the kirtan enters our ears, with the development of bhakti, the specific affinity for the format in which Krishna comes is destroyed, as the fire of digestion removes the additional elements that are not necessary and throws it away. And an affinity for Krishna's names develops on its own. So, when we hear and chant in any format, we worship the deity. Sometimes devotees dress the deities at home in a specific way that they like. Or they cook food for the deities according to their tastes. But after some time, you find that they appreciate prasadam. Now let me give you a very strong example of this. This is a really, really deep point. Radhanath Maharaj, one young devotee, actually a fellow brahmachari in Pune, Karna Gaurang Prabhu, asked this question. His question was, he asked Govinda Prabhu, for those who know Govinda Prabhu, he's Maharaj's first disciple and long-standing servant. He asked him, Prabhu, what is Radhanath Maharaj's favorite food? He said pizza. Maharaj loves Italian prasadam. And then he asked, what was Maharaj's favorite food before Krishna consciousness? He said Italian, pizza. So this devotee asked his questions with a specific intention. His question was, if Maharaj loved pizza before Krishna consciousness, and he loves pizza now, after such deep practice, how can we say that a person's nature changes because of bhakti? Have you ever had this question? And another question, some people say, I'm very passionate, I'm very, so-and-so, my nature is like this. Will my nature change because of bhakti? Do we all become one homogeneous being? Like we talk the same way. How boring that would be. We all talk the same, we all think the same way, we all do things the same way. Is that how bhakti works? But then what happens when we become liberated souls? We continue to serve Krishna, but is it in a particular mold? Well, here's the thing. There is a part of our nature that can be very, very conducive for Krishna's service. So, for example, you look at someone like Ganesham Prabhu. Even before he was introduced to ISKCON, he was one of the most passionate, most focused individuals out there. Actually, Ganesham Prabhu's nature is such, he can put his mind to anything and make it work. He's that good and that focused. His intelligence is that sharp. Now, when he comes to Krishna consciousness, now if you know his schedule, he sleeps at all hours of the day sometimes, because his service is like that. He's in charge of the brahmachari ashram, the deity services, the temple, outreach, traveling sankirtan. He's in charge of so many things. So when I was there in the ashram, I would see him sleep sometimes at 10, sometimes at 12, sometimes at 1, sometimes at 3, and sometimes he would attend Mangala Arati, chant his rounds, and then go to sleep at 6 in the morning. Now this is a crazy schedule. Did he do that before Krishna consciousness? Yes, he did. But here's the thing. Alongside that kind of focused nature, I'm not saying for him specifically, also sometimes comes, a real irritation, like, it's a fiery temper or a fiery attitude in dealing with things. Now you imagine that in Krishna consciousness. When such a focused person comes into bhakti, their anger becomes directed not at devotees, not at the deities, but at things that are against Krishna consciousness. There's an element of that anger which is useful. There's an element of that anger which allows things to work in balance. Their anger goes into balance. Their ability to focus becomes completely focused in devotional service. They become an entire field of activity, field of increasing Krishna's service. But you look at someone else, like, for myself, I've always sort of been, a thinker, so to speak, before Krishna consciousness, now even after. I would think about things before, I would research them endlessly, and that's how I study the Shastra also. But it is the same nature, but the negative elements of that nature have dropped away. The tendency to laze around, the tendency to just armchair philosophize, I hope that is dropping away. It has dropped away. And the part of my nature which is focused on contemplation, introspection, has been employed in a positive sense. So, coming back to Radhanath Maharaj's example, if you give him pizza that is not prasadam, do you think he will take it? But, as a counter-example, he was invited by Vaishnavas in Chaupati. They wanted to feed him dosa. They didn't know that if they fed him dosa, it would completely kill his stomach, because his health condition is such that he can't digest fermented food. So he went there just to please them. His happiness was in pleasing them. And so therefore he didn't mind so much what he ate. He ate those dosas. He came back to the bathroom, and so that he would live, he started, he vomited the entire thing out into the toilet. And he was doing this for an hour or more when he came back to Chapati. But his value was what? In pleasing Vaishnavas. So going back to the original question, does one's nature change before and after bhakti? Yes, it does. It may not change how his nature operates, but it refines it and makes it focused on bhakti. But his actual happiness comes in what gives Krishna and the Vaishnavas pleasure, and not in personal desire. So therefore the example of digestive fire is the example used in Bhagavatam. It takes out those elements that are not necessary and throws it away. But it keeps those elements that are conducive to bhakti and retains it. So sometimes devotees feel, if I become a devotee, will I lose my nature? Will I lose my individuality? Will I become of one mold? The reality is that bhakti will completely it will revive our nature. It'll make us real individuals, able to give Krishna a unique kind of happiness. And in fact, this is the nature of the spirit soul also. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in the 14th chapter of the 10th canto, in a commentary to a verse, he says, every living entity, every spirit soul has a unique ability to please Krishna in a very specific mood for Krishna to taste. And therefore, Krishna manifests a specific, unique quality to attract every single living entity. And therefore, he says, Krishna has unlimited qualities. This is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's statement. So devotional service revives our originality. Now you look at Kriti's question, for example, specific attachment to a single person. What does Narottam Das Thakur say? Now that Ramachandra Kaviraj has left me, has passed away, I can't deal with this separation. You know the song Jainila Premadhana? Who knows this song? What is the translation?
Well, one of the most pertinent lyrics is smash a rock against my head. shows out of separation, whereas Rupa...
Where's Rupa, Sanatana? Where's Srinivasa Acharya? Where have they all gone? Devoid of their association, I will smash my head on the rock, I will enter fire. And I can't bear this anymore. Does that sound like general affection unattached to anybody else? Because with the performance of bhakti, what happens is a unique desire to please Krishna arises in the heart. And then even though one has affection for all the Vaishnavas, particularly other Vaishnavas whose mood of serving Krishna is complementary in our original spiritual nature, we come together, even in our condition level right now, we come together and we really miss them. And that's the most natural and beautiful thing. It doesn't happen for these transcendentalists, the Nishkama Karma yogis. It does happen for devotees. So devotee state of liberation is actually, from the material side, it is the same. Their material impressions are destroyed. If they liked a mango, they would see a mango and initially they would want it. They would want all different kinds of mangoes for their own taste. But now when they see a mango, they see, oh, this is wonderful, this is really good tasting, and I want to cut it up for Radha Gopinath and serve it to Radha Gopinath. Or I know this devotee really likes mangoes, let me take it and feed the Vaishnavas. There was a devotee in the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. He would buy items like succulent mangoes and give it to the Vaishnavas so that they would be forced to leave something behind, like the seeds or the skin. And then he would go and eat from the seeds and skin because he wanted their remnants. Because these are the impressions of bhakti. Solid, intense attachment. That's the original nature of the spirit soul. So it's very, very different. It is so confidential it is not spoken about in the second chapter of the Gita. In fact, it is not elaborated on until we come to Bhagavatam. But this is the actual nature of the devotee. And you see it fully manifest. It's described in Bhagavatam, but you actually see it in Chaitanya Charitamrita, which in some sense is a commentary on the Bhagavatam. The lives of the devotees of Chaitanya Charitamrita describe the principles of the Bhagavatam. And that's where you see these principles operate. Okay, any questions here?
Sorry to be in pain, but
No.
why did you put destroys the subtle body? What is the purpose of destroying the subtle body?
To destroy our connection between the soul and our gross body. Because we have the spirit soul and we have the gross body, but how is a pure spirit soul that is aware of its original position, how does it ever identify with this body? And the reason is it's masked. Its original nature is filtered through the subtle body. So it's kind of like you see a light through a filter. It doesn't come out in its original colors or shape or form. And there are 3 levels of filters that are applied. The description in the Bhagavad Gita, I think it comes in the 3rd or 4th chapter, is like a baby being covered by the embryo, like a mirror covered with dust, or like a fire covered with smoke. So the fire covered with smoke is a very superficial covering, right? You can still see the original form and shape and the qualities of the soul. But then the mirror with dust, you can see the form, but you can't really see the shape or its quality is not fully manifest. And a baby within an embryo, you can't see it at all. You can't even see its presence really. You can see something is there, but nothing really. So these are the levels of coverings of the mind on the gross body, on the spirit soul, which causes it to have different degrees of disassociation with its original spiritual nature and identify progressively more and more with the body. It's okay. Any other last questions? Okay. So, I would refer you to text 52. And text 53. So in text 52, Arjuna's implicit question, not stated, was, how do I know that I've transcended the need for karma yoga? Or how do I know that my intelligence has become sufficiently purified? And Krishna has said, when your intelligence has passed out of the dense forest of delusion, you shall become indifferent to all that has been heard and all that is to be heard. In other words, you become indifferent to all glorifications or advertisements of material enjoyment. Your intentions become focused on aiming for the spirit soul. That is the transition between karma yoga and jnana yoga. So Arjuna's next implicit question is, how do I know? Because if the whole purpose of this entire process is to fix the intelligence on the Atma, right? This is called Buddhi Yoga, or the state of Sthita Prajna, constant realization, constant awareness, constant consciousness of one's spiritual nature. So when is that Sthita Prajna state achieved? Text 53 says, Shruti vipratipannate yada stasyati nischala. When your mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas, and when it remains fixed in the trance of self-realization, samadhav achala buddhis. Achala buddhis. It is an unwavering intelligence. This is the qualification of someone who is liberated. Their intelligence is fixed, it no longer moves. It's no longer affected by experiences of this world to change its perception or thought. Funny example, tragic and funny. There was a famous person in India who decided that he was liberated, and he conducted an experiment. You actually know him. He challenged all the ladies in India. If you come before me in your birthday suit, I can show you that my mind is not at all going to move. That was his challenge. Of course, no respectable lady is going to take up this challenge. But one prostitute said, okay, I'll take it up. So she came and sat before him, and the challenge was for one full night. He lasted an hour, and then he couldn't deal with it anymore. They engaged. The next day, he had a different philosophy. His philosophy was, you should enjoy so much that you don't feel like enjoying anymore. That became a famous philosophy in India. But do you know whom I'm talking about? Okay, we'll talk about it later. But in this instance, you see someone whose mind, whose intelligence was disturbed by material circumstances. It changed its fixation in knowledge. And this doesn't happen here. No matter what experiences come, no matter what sense objects come and go, this person's intelligence does not move. That is a state of sthita prajna, of constant realization. Samadhav achala buddhis, unmoving intelligence. Tada yogam avapsisi. Here yoga means you will achieve complete union with Krishna. Tada yogam avapsisi, in the nature of Brahman. Okay, now we cover the final section of the second chapter. We have so far discussed from 1 through to 7 and therefore 10, Arjuna's surrender. From text 12 to about 29 we discussed, or 30, we discussed Krishna's providing knowledge of the spirit, soul and body to bring Arjuna to the spiritual platform. Then from 30-31 to about 38-37, we discussed how Krishna was inspiring Arjuna to act on the platform of duty, because that was the means by which he can realize the spirit soul. He was inducing him with material benefits. From 39 through to 53, he has described the process of Nishkama Karma Yoga, the manner of worshipping Krishna through karma in order to uncover, in order to purify his heart and make his intelligence more fixed internally. Now Arjuna is asking, after the final stage of realization, what are the qualities of the realized person? So this is the fifth section. The reason he's asking about qualities is because it's only through qualities that the depth of realization can be demonstrated. Some people have the question, how do we know Krishna consciousness is real? How do we know it's not just something of the mind? Has anybody had this question before? Because it could be something from the mind, right? I just think this, and other people think, if I chant something else, then that's good for me too. Or if I'm just in the material world, it's just what you think. Who's to say what is right and what is wrong? And sometimes, a friend of mine asked me the question. He was half joking, but it was an interesting question. People say the lunatics are lunatics. Lunatics think that we're lunatics. Who's actually the lunatic? It's a perception. And just because we have a common understanding, people are branded as lunatics. Is there any fixed level on which something can be measured? That is the question. Here is the answer to this question. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that it is through the manifestation of qualities that are so high in their degree, they cannot possibly come from the mind or the body. It is through the emergence of such qualities, and he mentions three. He says humility, tolerance, sweet speech. He says the manifestation of these three qualities shows that this process is actually transcendental. Because there's no way that the extent to which these three qualities manifest in a devotee can ever manifest in anybody, no matter how you program their mind. Example of humility, Haridas Thakur. Example of tolerance, Haridas Thakur, Ambarish Maharaj. Again, humility, Ambarish Maharaj. Example of sweet speech, Ambarish Maharaj. We don't have time to study these pastimes right now, but the Bhagavatam shows the prema of an individual by showing their complete indifference to this world and any effects in this world. It shows, and in comparison to liberated souls, it shows the qualifications of devotees being more humble, more tolerant, and able to tolerate provocating circumstances more than even liberated souls. And that is the essence of the Ambarish Maharaj versus Durvasa Muni pastime. Durvasa Muni was a liberated soul, yet when confronted by the Sudarshan Chakra, he ran through the entire universe. Ambarish Maharaj, he didn't move a millimeter. His foot didn't move. He just stood there, and he just thought, this is Krishna. There was nothing, not even a flicker. He just put his hand and just was praying to Krishna. Can anyone even imagine? Even the most mentally programmed, unless someone is unconscious, an awake, conscious individual, no matter how you program their mind, can they just stand there in such a provocating circumstance? They're conscious, they're able to make their own decision. Can you imagine flogging someone in 22 marketplaces and still have them think about the welfare of the people who are whipping them? After one whip, actually, it's really funny. You send a strongly worded email to somebody, I am highly disappointed in you. You know what kind of reaction you get back from that person? It's like, who the dash are you to judge me? That's effectively the message they communicate. Has anyone experienced this? I tried this twice in my life. I sent an email to two people like this. Boy, it was like a whole Ferrari that had to be managed. But it's hard to not even get... In India, at least, people have some level of tolerance, generally speaking. Youngsters, if they're slapped by elders, they'll mutter in their mind, but they won't react externally. Even now, that quality is disappearing. But Haridas Thakur was flogged in 22 marketplaces. It's ridiculous. And then he was telling them, are you okay? Your hand's okay? Are you tired? They were like, stop asking that question. If you don't die, we will be killed. Oh, is my being alive causing you trouble? Okay, then I'll just leave. Okay. And he just left. But that's incredible. You look at St. Francis, and he was walking in the snow with a brother. He said, Brother Leo, do you know what true happiness is? Brother Leo said, no. Is it when we experience communion with Christ? He said, no, brother. Real happiness is if we go in the snow and we knock on the door of our fellow brother and we say, brother, please let us in. We are dying from the cold. We are your brothers. In the name of Christ, in the name of God, please let us in. And that person says, no, you are heretics. You have desiccated the church. You have, with your practices, taken people away from Christ. You are not welcome here. Get out. And they shut the door in our face. And with nowhere to go, with death in our face, we knock again and we fall at this person's feet and we say, oh brother, no, it is me, your brother. I have not done anything wrong. I've been faithful to our Lord and Master my whole life. Our whole life. We seek shelter. We will die. Please give us some shelter. That person spitting in our face shuts the door. And then we, walking outside, ready to meet our death, our mind completely free of malice of our brother. We see this as a gift given by the Lord. And we see that this is an opportunity given by the Lord to glorify Him. That, oh Brother Leo, is real happiness. As friend Francis, Radhanath Maharaj describes this. Can you imagine such a quality in an individual? It is only through the presence of qualities that one can understand the transcendental nature of a process. Sometimes we get into criticizing Islam, Christianity, or certain processes, but if you can find an individual who has genuinely manifested these qualities by practicing a process, you should know that that process has some degree of real transcendence attached to it. And then we should start searching for not the general practice of that process. What has this individual done that they've been able to connect to the Lord in such a way that they're able to transcend material nature? And we take shelter of the process established by such a great devotee. And this is actually why we follow, you know that verse, Mahajana Yena Gata Sapanta? You can search through all the scriptures, you can find every contradictory point to argue against. You can take opinions from many people who are thinkers, and you will always get different opinions. How do you find the truth? In the heart of one who is completely sheltered under the internal energy of the Lord, whose life is devoted to simply hearing and chanting about Him, who manifests these qualities to such a high degree that it's impossible that it comes from this world. In the heart of such an individual, from their words, from their actions, their character, one knows the actual path towards Krishna. So, you will notice at the end of the 2nd, at the end of the 12th, and at the end of the 14th chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, after the process is described, you will see qualities being described. Because this is the only way you can actually check transcendence. So Arjuna is asking, Sthita Pragya se ka bhasha? And here he is asking 4 questions. So the first question is ka bhasha. Bhasha means language. So ka bhasha means in what terms is this person described? How is the Sthita Pragya described? That is the question. In what language is it described? This is not clear? Sthita Pragyasya ka bhasha. Samadhistasya Keshava. Sthita de kim prabhasheta. Kim prabhasheta. Prabhasheta means how does he speak? How does he respond to provocating circumstances, either good or bad? Kim asita. Asita means how does he sit? Asan, asita. How does he sit? What this means is, in the presence of sense objects, how does he keep his mind fixed? How does he sit down? And brajeta, kim brajeta. How does he walk? Which means, when this person is dealing with sense objects, how do they deal with sense objects in such a way that they do not get entangled or their fixedness of their intelligence doesn't get compromised? How are they described? How do they respond to situations? How do they tolerate material circumstances coming to them, in the sense of when sense objects are touching their senses, how do they deal with it? And 2, how do they operate? How do they work with sense objects? Has everybody got these 4 questions?
Sorry, what's the last one again?
How do people deal with sense objects? So when such a person is working or fighting or doing his various activities, how does this person do it? So that and with a fixed intelligence. The first topic, first Ka Bhasha, is covered in text 55. The second part, Kim Prabhashita, is covered in 56, 57. Kim Asita is covered in 6 verses from 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, and 63. And the fourth is covered from 64 through to 71, 8 verses. And then 72 is a summary. So that is an overview of this section. Now let us go through it. So the first one is Ka Bhasha. Okay, let us quickly go through text 54 purport. Can someone read the translation?
Arjuna said, "O Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak, and what is his language? How does he sit, and how does he walk?"
So Prabhupada says, as there are symptoms for each and every man in terms of his particular situation, similarly one who is Krishna conscious has his particular nature, talking, walking, thinking, feeling, etc. As a rich man has the symptoms by which he is known as a rich man, as a diseased man has his symptoms, etc. So a man in transcendental consciousness of Krishna has specific symptoms in various dealings. One can know his specific symptoms from the Bhagavad Gita. Most important is how the man in Krishna consciousness speaks, for speech is the most important quality of any man. It is said that a fool is undiscovered as long as he does not speak, and certainly a well-dressed fool cannot be identified unless he speaks. But as soon as he speaks, he reveals himself at once. The immediate symptom of a Krishna-conscious man is that he speaks only of Krishna and of matters relating to him. Other symptoms then automatically follow, as stated below. Extraordinary purport. Text 55. Shri Bhagavan Hovacha Prajahati Yada Kaman Sarvan Partha Manogatan Atmanyevatmana Tushta Sita Pragyastadochyate. So Tada Uchyate. Uchyate means is spoken of or is described in the following way. So the actual emphasis of this verse is in the third line. Atmani eva atmana tushta. So Atmani, in himself, eva atmana. Atmana here means Krishna. He is satisfied with Krishna within himself. Tushta means satisfied. And because of that satisfaction, Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan. Manogatan or manorata, the creations of the mind, he has given up. Prajahati, kaman, sarvan. Sarvan means all, kaman means desire, prajahati means he gives up. All concoctions of the mind, all desires of the mind that comes up. So someone who is internally fixed in Krishna and disregards anything that is there from his mental creation, such a person is called the Sthita Pragya. This is the essential description of the liberated soul. And hopefully in the discussions we've had before, that has come through. Purport. The Bhagavatam affirms, translation. Can someone read the translation?
When a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification which arise from mental
concoction,
and when his mind thus purified finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be a pure transcendental consciousness.
So Atma here can mean both the self and the supersoul. So the principal quality is, because of his attraction to Paramatma, or attraction to Krishna, he's satisfied with Krishna within himself, and therefore he's satisfied with his own spiritual nature. Purport. The Bhagavatam affirms that any person who is fully in Krishna consciousness or devotional service of the Lord has all the good qualities of the great sages, whereas a person who is not so transcendentally situated has no good qualifications, because he is sure to be taking refuge in his own mental concoctions. Consequently, it is rightly said herein that one has to give up all kinds of sense desire manufactured by mental concoction. Artificially, such sense desires cannot be stopped. But if one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, then automatically sense desires subside without extraneous efforts. So the focus is in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, one has to engage himself in Krishna consciousness without hesitation, for this devotional service will instantly help one onto the platform of transcendental consciousness. Further down, such a transcendentally situated person has no sense desires resulting from petty materialism. Rather, he remains always happy in his natural position of eternally serving the Supreme Lord. All right. Text 46. Dukkeshu anudvigna mana sukkeshu vigatas priyaha vitaraga bhaya krodha sita dhir muniruchyate. Translation.
One who is not disturbed in mind, even admits the threefold miseries or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear and anger. He is called a sage of serene mind.
So this describes somebody who's above the different waves of the mind's operations. For example, dukkeshuv anudvigna mana. So when he experiences misery, his mind is not agitated. Remember, this is the question, kim prabhaseta. How does he respond? How does he deal with that situation? So when he's faced with suffering, his response in his mind is there's no agitation, there's no sadness. Sukkeshu vigatas priyaha. It is not like a delighted interest. It is there, fine. There's no peak, there's no trough. That's the first level of response whenever we're dealing with a situation. And Vita raga bhaya krodha. So these are the three conditioned responses that we have to generally things of this world. Raga means attachment, bhaya means fear, krodha means anger. And if we think about how much of our life is governed by these three emotions, it's quite a lot. So raga. So vita raga means that there is no, this is mine and I really need this for myself. That attachment is not there. Bhaya, when that object goes away, the fear of the object going away, or fear of people who are going to take these objects away from us. Either, for example, fear of the bank rising with rising interest rates, or fear of our job being taken away, fear of, that fear of being like a small fish being targeted by so many others. That fear is not there. Shri Shri Radha Gopinath ki. And anger. When someone weaker than us cheats us or takes something away, have you ever noticed, even as devotees, how we mull things over? Just, with anger or frustration, how could this person say this to me? How could this happen to me? Or, if someone, I had this experience in India when an auto driver for 20 rupees was willing to take me and get me beaten up somewhere. He was just speeding along the road and I had to hit him and then finally say, here, take your 20 rupees, get out of here. But it was, I experienced a lot of fear. What could this person do? He was talking on the phone and calling some of his friends, taking me to an isolated spot. I had passports, I had cash, I had everything in my bag. They could have done anything. But fear, when you feel like, people are pushing you and taking things from you, you're helpless and powerless to take it away. Or attachment. Vita raga bhaya krodha. You're above these, these natural reactions of the mind. Your mind, the mind of such a fixed person doesn't respond in this way. Sthita dhir munir uchyate. Munir means somebody whose mind is fixed. Prabhupada will comment on that in the purport. He says, Muni has different angle of vision. Muni is someone who mentally speculates, but a Sthitadir Muni, which is what is referenced in this verse, is someone of fixed mind. And such a person doesn't experience these kind of responses to external provocation. So Prabhupada at the bottom of the purport says, attachment means accepting things for one's own sense gratification, and detachment is the absence of such sensual enjoyment. But one fixed in Krishna consciousness has neither attachment nor detachment. because his life is dedicated in the service of the Lord. Consequently, he is not at all angry even when his attempts are unsuccessful. Success or no success, a Krishna conscious person is always steady in his determination. There's shelters elsewhere. Text 57. This is again a response. Ya sarvatra nabish snehas tat tat prapya shubha shubham na binandanti na dveshti tasya pragya pratishtita. Translation.
In the material world, one who is unaffected by whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither praising it nor despising it, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge.
So this also describes what they don't do in response verbally. Nabi nandanti, they do not praise, oh, you are such a pious soul, you have glorified me with such nice words. Or nadveshti, your class was not good, I couldn't relate to it. What? Who are you to speak like this? Can you give a better class than me? Or, who are you to disrespect me? They don't utter such words. Those thoughts don't come to their mind, they don't utter such words. Nabi nandanti nadveshti. And tat tat prapya shubha ashubham. Shubha means auspicious, ashubham means inauspicious. And ya sarvatra anabhishnehas. They don't have a specific affection for any individual. There's a general affection for everybody. Sneha means that specific attachment of friendliness with somebody, and that specific attachment is not there with anybody. All right. Next verse. Text 58. Yada samharate chayam kurmo agnaniva sarvasha indriyan indriyantebhyas tasya pragya pratishtitaha. Translation.
One who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects, as a tortoise draws its limbs within the shell, is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness.
So this answers the third question. So in one verse, the quality of the Sita Pragya has been described. That was text 55. And text 56 and 57 described Kim Prabhasheta, that they don't have either the mental or verbal responses that we might have to provocating circumstances. Text 58 now starts the description of when sense objects come to their senses, how do they respond? Can someone read the translation? Again, sorry.
One who is able to withdraw its senses from sense objects, as the tortoise draws its limbs within the shell, is only fixed in perfect consciousness.
So if you look at a tortoise, has anyone ever seen a tortoise before? What does it do if there's danger? It just goes inside. And then you can kick the turtle, and not that I recommend you do that, but you can kick the turtle, just spin over, and it'll just stay put. And then after some time, you'll see a head cautiously poke out like this, and then it'll kind of come out cautiously, and it will come through. So whenever we are in provocating circumstances, sometimes because of our past impressions, we may be put in a situation where, there are different advertisements, different billboards, or different things that attract our mind. But in those circumstances, if we can think of a way to just withdraw our senses, for me it's very easy. I just take off my glasses and I can't see a thing. But for others it may be a different response. Maybe it's you're reading a book, maybe it's you're doing something else. But if you just withdraw your mind from the provocations around you, then it just cuts that layer off. So someone whose instinctive response is, when, for example, a person sees a person of the opposite sex or some object they're attracted to, they just go in a different direction. If you know that there's, for example, a bar or there is, a tennis, court, and you're going to be distracted there, you just take another route. You just go a different route and come. Or, because it's interesting, most of what we do as a habit, people have found it's triggered by like something. For example, hypothetically, if someone is smoking, sometimes it's connected to just wanting to relax in a particular way. So often, de-addiction programs try and catch what that initiating behavior is and try and change that behavior. Maybe this fellow is smoking because they're in the company of other smokers. So you just don't go there. You go and find other better association where you might be playing cricket or something. But if I know, for example, I'm going to be just gabbing away in a certain company, I would just withdraw myself and go to a company where you talk Krishna Katha. Or if you know in particular places you're going to eat something or drink something that is not right, it may not be prasadam, it may be something else, but you just avoid going to those places. You go to like Govindas or something. You just don't go in those directions. There may be, one has to identify what are those behaviors, initial behaviors that cause one to go down a train of thought. And one cuts those things off at the root. One whose intelligence is fixed in Krishna consciousness, they naturally think, how can I avoid going down in these different directions? I don't do this, I don't do this, I don't do this. My sister was very attached to novels when she was growing up. When she decided, I only want to study Bhagavatam and I don't want to read novels, she took all those books and threw it away somewhere. And she would never touch them. We played tennis together, we played so much together. But at some point, she just was like, if I watch the tennis course, if I do this, my mind is going to be distracted. So she just stopped looking at the news for a long time. And then when she was more stable, she would just hear as much as was necessary to know what is going on. But her own attention is focused on her hearing, chanting, work, family, etc. This is someone whose intelligence is fixed. Vyavasayatmika buddhi. Their natural thing is cut off any behaviors that take them elsewhere. So Prabhupada in this purport says, he says, most people, however, are servants of the senses and are thus directed by the dictation of the senses. That is the answer to the question as to how the yogi is situated. The senses are compared to venomous serpents. They want to act very loosely and without restriction. The yogi or the devotee must be very strong to control the senses like a snake charmer. He never allows them to act independently. There are many injunctions in the revealed scriptures. Some of them are do-nots and some of them are do's. Unless one is able to follow the do's and the do-nots, restricting oneself from sense enjoyment, it is not possible to be firmly fixed in Krishna consciousness. The best example set herein is the tortoise. The tortoise can at any moment wind up its senses and exhibit them again at any time for particular purposes. Similarly, the senses of the Krishna conscious persons are used only for some particular purpose in the service of the Lord and are withdrawn otherwise. Arjuna is being taught here to use his senses for the service of the Lord instead of for his own satisfaction. Keeping the senses always in the service of the Lord is the example set by the analogy of the tortoise who keeps the senses within. So it's 12 o'clock. We'll stop here. We'll finish this section next week. Janmashtami and Prabhupada's appearance fall on Saturday and Sunday, so that week we won't have class. But I'll be sending through, I know I've said this many times, I'll be sending the questions for Chapter 2 in your mailboxes by the end of today. You will have 3 weeks to prepare for the Chapter 2 test. So the first week back, we'll have the Chapter 2 test. Yeah. Any questions? Sorry? No, second chapter. Oh, what date is it is? If someone has a phone, they can check. Oh, is that so? Who else is involved in Hornsby Janmashtami? Okay. Can you write the test at home, check each other's responses? The only reason is that we want to push on with the schedule. Would that be okay? You're traveling from a long distance, right?